Hi guys, here, welcome back. So today I'm going to be showing you how to neatly finish up the neckline of your yoke using 3 different methods. So if you're interested, please watch till the end. So here I'm going ahead to cut out the yoke that I'll be using for today's illustration, and I'll go ahead to start with the first one right away. So the first method I'm going to be showing you is the popular method that has been used by almost all designers. It is very popular and very common, and the first method is the use of bias to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So this is what a bias looks like. It comes in a row like this. So if you don't want to use a bias, you can simply cut your fabric in a bias form to finish up the neckline of your yoke. And also there are different ways to place the bias on the yoke. You can decide to place it in a way that the bias will be showing on the outer part of the yoke, or you can decide to place it and the bias will be on the inner part of the yoke. So whichever method you want to use is very much okay. So if you want the bias to show on the outer part of the yoke, you go ahead to start stitching from the inner part, after which you turn it over to the outer part. But if you want it to show on the inner part of the yoke, you start stitching from the outer part, after which you turn it over to the inner part. And also you can also place your bias on the yoke by placing your fabric in between the bias like this. Then you fold the bias over and then you go ahead to stitch the bias on the yoke. Whichever method is convenient for you, you can simply use to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So I'm going to go ahead to quickly show you how to finish up the neckline of your yoke using the bias on the sewing machine. So before fixing your bias to your yoke, first you go ahead to determine where you want the bias to be visible. So for me, I want the bias to be visible on the inner part of the yoke. So I'm going to go ahead to start stitching on the good face. So I'm going to go ahead to place the bias on the good face of my lace fabric like this. I'll place it, then I'll go ahead to start stitching. So when stitching, I'm going to be stitching on this folded part, which is going to be serving as a guide for me. And I'll also go ahead to place the bias on the yoke, making sure that the bias and the neckline on the yoke is aligning, after which I'll go ahead to stitch all the way around like you see me doing in the video. Once I'm done stitching this part, the next thing I'm going to go ahead to do now is to turn the bias over like this. I'm going to go ahead to flip it over like you see me doing in the video. As you can see, we're having a neat finishing on the outer part already. So all you need to do is to fold in the seams, then you flip it over like this, then you go ahead to start stitching on the bias again. And when stitching on the bias this time around, you try to stitch close to the edge of the bias. So I'm going to go ahead to place this on my sewing machine, then I will run a stitch on the bias like you see me doing in the video. So once I'm done stitching the bias, this is what it is going to look like. As you can see, it's looking so neat and it came out really nice. So I'm just going to go ahead to give it a good press, then I'll come back to show you what it looks like. So this is what your yoke is going to look like once you finish it up with a bias strip. It also comes out nice and is looking so neat. So now we're going to move over to the next method, which is the second method. And the second method is using the same fabric to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So here I have a 2 net, and when using this method, you're going to be cutting out 2 yoke because you'll be using the same fabric to finish up the neckline of the yoke. So I'm just going to go ahead to place the 2 yoke on each other like this. After which I'll go over to my sewing machine to run a stitch on the neckline of the yoke. So I'm going to go ahead to quickly do this, then I'll come back to show you what to do next. So I'm going ahead to run a stitch on the neckline, and this is what I have. When stitching, make sure you use a matching thread so that it doesn't contrast the color of the fabric you already have. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead to quickly do now is to notch. I'm going to go ahead to create small notches on the neckline like you see me doing in the video. So when notching, be careful so you don't cut through your seam. So once I am done notching the neckline of the yoke, the next thing I'm going to go ahead to do now is to trim off the excess fabric I have on the neckline. So I'm going to go ahead to carefully trim off the excess fabric. So when trimming, I'll be trimming very close to my seam, but be careful so you don't cut through your seam. So I'm going to go ahead to trim off the excess fabric I have on the neckline, after which I'll go ahead to turn the fabric over to the good face. So after trimming and turning the yoke over to the good face, this is what it is going to look like. As you can see, it's looking very neat. This is what you should have. So it is very important to trim off the excess, because if you don't, it is going to be showing when it is being turned over to the good face. So next, I'm going to go ahead to move over to the next method that you can use to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So this next method is actually my favorite method. I love this method because you can use this method to finish up the neckline of any color of fabric, be it a tulle net or a lace. And this method is using a skein tulle net to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So you can use it on any color of fabric and it's going to come out really nice. So I'm just going to go ahead to place this tulle net on this lace fabric. I'll place it on the good face of the fabric, after which I'll go over to my sewing machine to finish up the neckline of the yoke. So after I was done placing the tulle net on the lace yoke, this is what it is going to look like. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead to do now is to create notches on the neckline of the yoke. Once I'm done creating the notches, I'm going to go ahead to trim up the excess like I did on the previous yoke, after which I will turn it over to the good face. So this is what the yoke is going to look like once you're done. This is what the neckline of the yoke is going to look like. As you can see, it's looking so neat and it's not looking like there is something on the inner part. This is my favorite among the three methods you can use to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So basically, this is all for the tutorial. So please kindly comment on which method you love using to finish up the neckline of your yoke. So thank you for watching. I will see you in my next tutorial.